Daniel sat up abruptly in bed, his heart hammering in his chest. The room was dark, except for the faint blue glow of the digital clock on his nightstand. 3:33 a.m. His breathing was shallow, and a strange sensation coursed through his body, like static electricity running under his skin. Something was wrong. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, running a hand through his hair. His fingers trembled slightly. He wasn't sick. He wasn't in pain. Yet an unshakable feeling told him that something inside him had shifted. Daniel pushed himself to his feet and shuffled to the bathroom. The fluorescent light flickered on, casting harsh shadows across his face in the mirror. He stared at his reflection and froze. His eyes, they weren't the same. The deep brown color of his irises now had a strange glow, like faint golden embers burning beneath the surface. He leaned closer, heart pounding. His skin was different too, smoother, almost unnaturally radiant. The fine lines that had begun creeping across his face were gone. He looked healthier, younger. This wasn't normal. He turned on the tap, splashing cold water onto his face. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe it was just exhaustion. But deep down, he knew the truth. This wasn't in his head. Something inside him was changing. The next morning, Daniel tried to shake off the eerie feeling from a night before. He went through his routine, heading to work as usual. He was a researcher at the Institute of Human Potential, a government-funded facility dedicated to studying the limits of a human body and mind. But today, everything felt off. As he walked down the street, he noticed people glancing at him. Not in the usual way, but as if they sensed something different. A woman passing by locked eyes with him for a moment, her expression shifting from curiosity to recognition. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but then she hurried away. At the Institute, Daniel sat at his workstation, staring at the data on his screen. His latest research project was analyzing the effects of meditation on brain activity. The numbers were consistent with past studies, until he noticed something unusual. Several participants had shown unexplained physiological changes. Skin clarity, increased energy, an unusual glow in the eyes. Daniel's blood ran cold. The same symptoms he was experiencing. His hands hovered over the keyboard. He pulled up another file, case study from past research. Every participant who had exhibited these changes had mysteriously disappeared within weeks of their transformation. No trace. No explanations. Just gone. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, his fingers tightened into fists. What the hell was happening? As the day dragged on, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every time he glanced over his shoulder, he caught subtle movements in his peripheral vision. Figures standing too still, strangers lingering just a little too long. By evening, the paranoia had fully set in. He decided to head home early. The moment he stepped into his apartment, a wave of unease washed over him. The air felt different. Then he saw it. A small, white envelope on his coffee table. His pulse skyrocketed. He hadn't left anything there. Slowly, he walked over, his hands shaking as he picked it up. There was no name, no return address, just his own initials scrawled on the front. He tore it open. A single note slid out. "You're changing. Don't let them see. Act normal. We will find you soon." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced. Who was watching him? Who left this note? And most importantly, what was he changing into? He stumbled back, gripping the edge of the table for support. His heart pounded violently against his ribs. Then, from the corner of the room, something moved. A shadow detached itself from the darkness, stepping forward. And Daniel's world shattered. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as the shadowed figure stepped forward, emerging from the dimly lit corner of his apartment. A man, tall, with sharp, angular features and piercing silver eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. He was dressed in a dark suit, immaculately tailored, yet utterly unremarkable, the kind of attire meant to blend into any crowd. But there was something deeply unsettling about him. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run. "Sit down, Daniel," the man said, his voice smooth, controlled. "You look like you're about to collapse." Daniel's muscles tensed. He didn't move. "How did you get in here?" he demanded. The man ignored the question. instead tilting his head slightly, studying him with an almost clinical curiosity. "It's happening faster than we expected," he murmured. "You're already feeling it, aren't you? The energy, the awareness, the glow." Daniel's stomach twisted. Who was this man? "I don't know what you're talking about," Daniel lied, his voice hoarse. The man's lips curved into something resembling a smile. "You're a scientist, Daniel. You know better than to deny observable reality. Look at yourself." Daniel clenched his fists, his pulse thundering in his ears. He could still feel it, that strange energy humming beneath his skin, making the world feel sharper, more vibrant. It was as if his senses had been dialed up to a level he didn't understand. And now this stranger was confirming his worst fear. It wasn't his imagination. Something real was happening to him. Daniel forced himself to stay calm. "Who are you?" The man exhaled, as if deciding whether to answer. "My name is Elias." He took a slow step forward, his silver eyes never leaving Daniel's. "I work for an organization that has been monitoring individuals like you for a very long time." Monitoring. Daniel's fingers twitched toward his phone, but Elias caught the movement and smirked. "Your phone won't help you." He pulled a sleek black device from his pocket and held it up. "Your entire apartment has been isolated. No signals in, no signals out." Daniel's blood ran cold. "What do you want from me?" Elias studied him for a long moment. Then, with a quiet intensity, he said, "To keep you alive." Daniel sat rigidly on the edge of the couch as Elias leaned back in his chair, the dim light casting eerie shadows across his face. "There are certain individuals in this world," Elias began, "who undergo a transformation." Daniel's breath hitched. Elias continued, his voice calm but deliberate. "Their bodies change. Their minds evolve. They begin to see the world differently, more clearly. Their energy shifts. Their presence becomes more compelling. They radiate something beyond normal human perception." Daniel didn't respond. Every word struck too close to home. Elias studied him. "It's not a disease, Daniel. It's an awakening." Daniel swallowed hard. An awakening into what? Elias's expression darkened. Something the world isn't ready for. The room fell silent. The weight of his words pressed down on Daniel like an invisible force. "This change," Daniel hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is it happening to other people?" Elias nodded slowly. "But not all of them survive it." Daniel's stomach twisted into a knot. "Survive?" He gripped the edge of the couch. "What do you mean?" Elias's gaze hardened. "The world has rules, Daniel. For centuries, certain groups have ensured that these rules are never broken. When someone like you begins to change, they take notice. They come for you." A cold dread seeped into Daniel's bones. "Who are they?" Elias's voice was barely a whisper. "The Watchers." Daniel shivered. "And what do they do?" Elias's silver eyes locked onto his. "They erase you." Daniel's hands were trembling. "Why?" Elias leaned forward, his voice razor-sharp. "Because you don't belong to the old world anymore. You're becoming something else, something they can't control." Daniel's head spun. He felt like he was losing his grip on reality. "This is insane," he muttered, running a hand over his face. Elias exhaled. "I know this is overwhelming, but we don't have much time. They already know about you. That note wasn't from them. It was from us." Daniel's breath hitched. "Us?" Elias's jaw tightened. "We're called the Sentinels. We find people like you before the Watchers do. We try to protect you, but—" he hesitated. "We don't always succeed." Daniel's skin prickled. Elias stood. "We need to leave. Now." Daniel's instincts screamed at him to move, to trust this man. But his logical mind fought back. How could he know who to trust? Before he could respond, a strange sensation filled the air, a subtle vibration, a barely perceptible hum, like static electricity crawling over his skin. Elias's eyes widened. "They're here." The lights flickered. A soft click echoed through the room. Daniel turned his head just in time to see the front door unlocking by itself. A slow, deliberate movement. The knob twisted, and then the door swung open. Two figures stood in the doorway, tall, motionless, dressed in sleek black suits. Their faces were unnervingly symmetrical, their eyes an unnatural shade of deep, liquid black. Elias whispered one word, "Run." Daniel didn't need to be told twice. His body moved before his mind could catch up. Pure survival instinct. He lunged toward the window, his heart pounding against his ribs. Elias grabbed his arm, yanking him sideways just as... Bang! The air cracked like a whip. A split second later, the wall behind him exploded inward. Chunks of drywall and splinters raining down like shrapnel. Daniel hit the floor hard, his ears ringing. What the hell was that? Elias pulled him up, his grip like iron. "They're not here to talk, Daniel. Move." The two men in the doorway stepped inside. Their movements were unnervingly smooth, calculated. Not quite human. One of them raised his hand. Daniel barely registered what was happening before Elias shoved him. Hard. Another deafening blast ripped through the air, missing Daniel by inches. The couch behind him disintegrated, torn apart by an invisible force. Daniel stumbled, his mind racing. Guns? No, there were no bullets. What kind of weapon was that? "Come with us," one of the men said. His voice was disturbingly flat, emotionless. Elias didn't wait for Daniel to hesitate. He pulled something from inside his coat, a small metallic device, and crushed it in his palm. The effect was immediate. A shock wave of static energy rippled through the room, distorting the air like a heat mirage. The two figures in black faltered. For the first time, they looked off balance. Elias took his chance. He grabbed Daniel and ran. They burst into the stairwell, feet pounding against concrete steps. "Who the hell are they?" Daniel gasped, struggling to keep up. "Watchers," Elias said without looking back. His voice was clipped, urgent. "They don't shoot bullets. They don't need to." Daniel didn't have time to process that before the entire stairwell shook. The Watchers were coming. Fast. A few floors down, Elias suddenly veered left, kicking open a rusted service door and dragging Daniel into a maintenance corridor. The air was damp, filled with the scent of old metal and mildew. Elias slammed the door shut behind them and locked it with a strange, keyless mechanism. "Buy us a few seconds," he muttered. Daniel doubled over, panting. His hands trembled violently. "What the hell is happening to me?" Elias turned to him, his expression dead serious. "Your body is waking up, Daniel. You're changing." "I don't want to change." Daniel snapped. "I want my life back." Elias sighed. "That's not an option anymore." Daniel clenched his fists. "Then what's happening to me? Why do I feel like I'm burning from the inside out?" Elias hesitated. "Then, because you are..." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Elias took a slow step forward. "Your energy is increasing, Daniel. Your body is generating something beyond normal human capability. The Watchers know it. That's why they came for you tonight." Daniel's head swam. He felt like he was losing control. Elias studied him carefully. Then, almost gently, he said, "Look at your hands." Daniel did, and froze. They were glowing. A faint, golden light pulsed just beneath his skin. Not bright, not blinding, but unmistakably there. His stomach twisted in horror. "What the hell is this?" Elias's eyes darkened. "It's what makes you different." Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. And yet, his hands continued to glow. Elias leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "You need to control it, Daniel. If you don't..." A deep, metallic groan echoed to the maintenance corridor. Daniel turned just in time to see the steel door bending inward, as if crushed by an invisible force. His stomach dropped. "They're coming," Elias muttered, "and they're done playing games." The door exploded inward. Daniel was thrown backward, his ears ringing. The Watchers stepped through the wreckage, untouched. Their suits weren't even wrinkled. Elias moved fast. He hurled something at their feet, a small black disc. It hit the ground with a sharp click, then detonated. A surge of blue energy tore through the corridor, distorting reality itself. The walls warped and cracked, as if being pulled apart by unseen hands. The watchers staggered. It was the first time Daniel had seen them react to anything. "Run now!" Elias barked. Daniel didn't hesitate. He sprinted past the chaos, Elias right behind him. They emerged onto a deserted back alley. Rain drizzled from the sky, reflecting the neon glow of the city. Daniel's pulse was a hammer in his chest. He turned to Elias. "What now?" Elias's silver eyes shimmered. "Now we disappear." Daniel swallowed. "And after that?" Elias exhaled. "Then I teach you how to survive." The city was alive with neon lights and the distant hum of traffic, but Daniel felt like he was slipping into another world, one where shadows move with intent and danger lurked behind every corner. He and Elias had been running for what felt like hours, darting through alleyways, cutting across abandoned buildings, trying to stay ahead of the watchers. But Daniel knew the truth. They were being hunted. Elias suddenly stopped, pressing himself against a damp brick wall. He gestured for Daniel to do the same. Daniel's chest heaved, his lungs burning from the cold night air. "They still following us?" Elias didn't answer immediately. His eyes flickered, silver, unnatural. Then he nodded. "They're close." Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't hear anything, didn't see anything, but the weight of unseen eyes pressed down on him like an iron grip. His fingers trembled, but not from fear. The glow was returning. A faint golden light pulsed beneath his skin, stronger than before. His veins felt like they were buzzing, filled with something alive. Elias saw it too. "You need to control that." "I don't even know what it is," Daniel whispered. "How am I supposed to control it?" Elias's gaze was unreadable. "By accepting it." Daniel clenched his jaw. "I didn't ask for this. No one ever does." The words carried a weight that made Daniel pause. He wanted to press for more, but there was no time. A sound, soft, almost imperceptible. A footstep on wet pavement. Elias's head snapped up. "Move." But it was too late. The alley lit up with a sudden, blinding blue glow. Daniel barely had time to react before the air split apart. A ripple, like a shock wave, tore through the space between them. Daniel stumbled backward as three figures stepped through the distortion. Watchers. And this time, they weren't holding back. One of them raised his hand. Daniel felt the shift in the air before it happened. A force, massive, invisible, rushed toward him. But something inside him reacted. His instinct screamed. His body moved on its own. The golden light in his veins flared. And instead of being thrown back, he held his ground. The force slammed into him. But instead of sending him flying, it shattered around him like a wave breaking against rock. The watchers hesitated. Elias's eyes widened slightly. "Well, that's new." Daniel didn't have time to be shocked. The momentary pause was over. The watchers moved, inhumanly fast. Elias was already reacting, reaching into his coat and tossing something into the air. A small silver orb. The moment it hit the ground, boom, a pulse of energy erupted outward, distorting space itself. The watchers flinched just for a second, but that was all they needed. "Run," Elias barked. Daniel turned and sprinted. They burst into an abandoned subway tunnel, the stench of rust and damp concrete thick in the air. Elias slammed the heavy metal door behind them, locking it with something not of this world. Daniel's heart pounded. His hands still tingled with energy. What the hell did I just do?" Elias exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. "You resisted." Daniel frowned. "Resisted what?" Elias looked at him, really looked at him. Then their control. Daniel's stomach dropped. Elias continued, his voice low and measured. "The Watchers don't just use physical force. They manipulate reality, bend space, twist energy. Most people don't even realize it before it's too late." Daniel shivered. He remembered the way the air had shifted, the crushing force, and how he had stopped it. "How?" Elias hesitated. Then, "Because you're not normal, Daniel." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, no kidding." Elias's gaze darkened. "I mean it. You're something different, something they can't control." A cold chill crawled up Daniel's spine. Elias continued, his voice grim. "And that makes you dangerous to them." Daniel swallowed hard. He could still feel it, the energy humming beneath his skin. Alive, waiting. He looked up at Elias. "So what now?" Elias's silver eyes gleamed. "Now," he smirked. "Now we see just how powerful you really are." The tunnel stretched endlessly, damp with the scent of rust and something ancient. Daniel's heart pounded as he followed Elias through the darkness. Their footsteps echoed against the cold stone walls, a rhythm that felt almost like a countdown. Time was running out. Elias stopped suddenly, his silver eyes flickering. "We're here." Daniel turned, expecting another dark corridor, but instead, before them lay a massive steel door, etched with glowing symbols. It pulsed, as if alive, as if waiting. "What is this place?" Daniel whispered. Elias placed a hand on the door. The symbols flared at his touch. "The only place they can't reach us." A deep rumble vibrated through the air, and slowly, the door began to open. Inside was nothing like Daniel expected. A vast chamber, filled with ancient machinery. Glowing conduits lined the walls, crackling with energy. At the center of it all, a pedestal, and on that pedestal, floating effortlessly above its surface, a shard of golden light. Daniel's breath caught. His veins burned, the golden energy inside him reacting to it. What is that?" Elias turned to him. "Your final test." A sound pierced the silence. A vibration, a shift in the air. Daniel knew before he even turned. The Watchers had found them. The chamber exploded into motion. The walls rippled, as if reality itself was breaking apart. 3 Watchers stepped through the distortion, their forms shifting, almost unstable. But their eyes, cold calculating, locked onto Daniel. "It ends here." The voice was not human. It was layered, fractured. Elias didn't hesitate. His hand shot out, and silver energy erupted from his palm, slamming into the nearest Watcher. But it wasn't enough. The others moved. Faster than human. Faster than thought. Daniel barely had time to react before one of them raised a hand, and the world turned to fire. Pain ripped through him. Daniel hit the ground hard, his vision flickering. His body burned. His veins felt like they were tearing apart. "Get up!" Elias's voice rang through chaos. Daniel couldn't move. The Watchers closed in. And then, a pulse. The golden light. It surged inside him, no longer waiting, no longer asking. Daniel's fingers dug into the stone floor. His breath came in sharp gasps. Something inside him shifted. He lifted his gaze. His eyes burned gold. The Watchers hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Daniel moved. One of the Watchers lashed out, sending another wave of crushing energy toward him. But this time, it shattered before it even reached him. Daniel barely understood what he was doing. Only that he could. The golden energy flared, surrounding him, bending to his will. He could feel it now, like an extension of himself, like something that had been waiting for him to wake up. The Watchers attacked. Daniel didn't run. He raised his hand, and the world trembled. Energy ripped through the chamber. Elias shielded his eyes as golden light erupted outward, crashing into the Watchers with the force of a collapsing star. They screamed, not in pain, in fear. For the first time, they were afraid of him. Daniel stepped forward, his body radiating power. "You wanted me?" His voice was calm, steady, unshaken. The Watchers staggered back. The space around them warped, unstable. One of them reached out, a final attempt to stop him. Daniel didn't let them. With a single thought, the golden energy rushed forward, and the Watchers were gone. Silence. The air was heavy, charged with leftover energy. Daniel let out a slow breath, his hands trembling. The power inside him had awakened. Elias approached, his expression unreadable. Then, after a long pause, he smiled. "You have no idea what you just did, do you?" Daniel met his gaze. "I stopped them." Elias's smirk deepened. "No, you did more than that." He turned to the pedestal, where the golden shard still hovered. Daniel's chest tightened. He knew what Elias was going to say before he even said it. You're not just part of this fight, Elias murmured. You're the key to ending it. Daniel stared at the shard, at the power it radiated, the power that now pulsed within him. For the first time, he understood. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.